Hey everyone, this is Nidhi from Designhill, your host for the day. I hope you and your family are keeping well and safe, and I welcome you all to this panel discussion with some amazing industry experts. Today, we are discussing all about PPC marketing, its relevance, and best practices. Today's event is brought to you by Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace that caters to the creative needs of businesses and individuals alike, who can source high quality designs from professional designers and buy unique products created by independent artists. So, moving ahead, let me introduce our speakers for today. We have with us Michelle Bridger. Michelle is a Facebook ad specialist at Michelle Bridger LLC and helps high ticket business owners achieve rapid growth. To date, her powerful methods have brought in over 25 million in revenue for her diverse client base. She and her team lead with strategy and are a powerful force in taking over ad accounts and helping business owners focus on serving more clients rather than living with their noses in their ad accounts. She is not just a traffic expert, she knows how to grow the bottom line fast. Michelle, would you like to say a quick hi to the audiences?
There we go. Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Wonderful to be joining this wonderful panel and to be talking about the future of PPC ads.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Up next, we have Aaron Levy. Aaron has developed strategies for clients ranging from F500 beasts and internationally recognized retailers, fast growth Series A startups, a few local plumbers, and regional adoption agencies here and there. In his career, he has overseen a few billions in media spend. He has spent time in just about every channel online, from media buying and email campaigns to affiliate and beyond, but found his home in SEM. He's a frequent speaker at conferences worldwide and wants to bring as many rising stars as possible into this lovely digital ad world. Aaron.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here and excited to answer some questions with some of my friends.
Great. Um, the next speaker for the day is Duane Brown. He has been called an international man of mystery and digital nomad by friends. He has lived in 6 cities across 3 continents and visited 40 countries around the world. After leaving Toronto in 2011 to gain an international view of the world, he has worked for Telstra in Australia and brands like ASOS, Jack Wills, and Mop while in London, UK. He now helps e-commerce and DTC brands grow through data, CRO, and PPC marketing across search and social ad platforms. Duan?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. It's going to be a great day, and with all the speakers, we're going to have an amazing time.
Same here, same here. Thank you. Next, we have Frederick Valleys. Fred is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, author, and a leading influencer in pay-per-click search marketing. One of Google's first 500 employees, he helped pioneer PPC marketing as the company's first AdWords evangelist. Today, he serves as co-founding CEO for Optimizer, a leading and award-winning PPC management platform. A sought-after industry thought leader, he contributes to leading marketing publications and conferences and is routinely called upon by journalists, writers, and podcasters for his industry insight and vision. Fred?
Yeah, thanks for having me on today. Let's talk some PPC, answer a lot of questions, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. Looking forward to it.
Great. Last but not the least, we have Joe Martinez. Joe is the director of client strategy for Clicks Marketing and one half of the Paid Media Pros YouTube channel. While he is hands-on in all aspects of PPC, his true passions lie in display, remarketing, audiences, and YouTube. He's a regular contributor to Search Engine Land, Marketing Land, and WordStream. He has also written for Social Media Examiner, PPC Hero, Unbounce, and AdStage. He has hosted webinars as well for SEMrush, Unbounce, Quora, and Microsoft Ads. He regularly speaks at conferences such as SMX, HeroCon, PopCon, and more. Finally, he was named a top 25 influential PPC expert by PPC Hero in 2017-20. Joe.
Hey, happy to be here and looking forward to get started. We have a lot of good questions to answer.
Great. Before we start the session, let's quickly look at what Designhill is all about.
Need to get your parents off your back? Head to the world's #1 creative marketplace, Designhill.
When I started my photography business, I needed something that said, this was more than just a hobby. It's not a hobby, Mom. That's why I went to Designhill and got an amazing logo super fast at a price I could afford. The process was easy using Designhill's logo maker. Just enter the name of your business, then pick out a number of designs that inspire you. I'll pick this one and that one looks cute. Then pick your colors or let the system decide. Add some more info like a slogan, the industry your business is in, and your budget. The logo maker, using machine learning and artificial intelligence, will design thousands of logo variants that you can choose from and adapt. In fact, I was able to get everything from business cards to t-shirt design and complete social media kit, all with the click of a button. With that, I'm all set. Now everyone I meet knows I'm a legit photographer. Even my mom. It's real. That's decaf.
Let the world know it's real and build your brand with Designhill.
All right, that was all about Designhill. And we are set to start the session now. Just a quick announcement, guys, to the audiences. We will take up questions during the session. So if you have any, please feel free to drop them in the questions tab on your screen, and the questions with maximum upvotes will be taken up. So the first question for the day, this is what our registrants asked us, is about keywords. And I will start with Aaron, you first. We all know about keywords, but what is that we need to still learn or maybe unlearn or relearn about it? Any practice that may have become redundant and doesn't work anymore with PPC campaigns?
The sort of best practice work and how we operate. Look, paid search and search in general has always started with keywords, but fundamentally we're trying to reach people. So as we start optimizing, and most marketers that we see start with keywords and then go to audiences and then go to messaging and then go to automation. And I think that's a little bit dated. The challenge is that, like, just because someone uses a word doesn't mean that the word means the same thing to a given person. So as we evolve and as we become better marketers, I think we have to look at not only what does a word or a phrase mean in keywords when we're building our accounts out, but what does that word mean given the person who is searching it? And how can we leverage that to paint a better user experience versus providing the same answer to everybody that exists? I mean, you think about Designhill, someone who is looking for 500 business cards for a networking event is very different from someone who is looking for 50,000 business cards for their entire staff, but they probably search for business cards. So what we have to do is look at keywords as part of a puzzle, and the answer that is a little bit less easy than it may have used to been. Or, I mean, frankly, it's the same challenges that used to be. We just have more data about humans now than we used to.
Thank you, Aaron. Michelle, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with Aaron's answer that in advertising, even more so than ever before, it's about the customer journey, and it's about speaking to them where they are, and especially speaking to them in story. So just looking at keywords, just looking at the targeting is missing the human element, and more than ever you need to be creative. So I completely echo what Aaron is saying.
Thank you, Michelle. Fred, your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying. I mean, basically think of the keyword as it's that magical moment of relevance when the user told you exactly what they needed. But guess what? You're not the only advertiser who's figured that one out, right? So now it's about being unique, creative, appealing, having a great offer. And that's then what draws the user in through your ad, through the ad extensions, all of that stuff. The other thing I want to point out, though, is that keywords, the way that we maybe know about them, if you know, for the folks on the call who haven't done PPC too extensively, but a keyword is no longer really a keyword. I mean, it used to be that you could tell Google, like, this is the word that I want to show up for. And now Google is like, well, you know, that kind of means the same as this and that. And so they start showing you for a lot of related queries. And this is really good for smaller advertisers who are not PPC experts, because you don't have to do the work of figuring out every single thing that the user might type in. But it also means that maybe you have to look for some additional controls, some notifications, maybe monitor the search terms report. And that's a whole new topic that we can debate quite a bit today, because Google made some changes to that. Right, but it's just one part of the journey, like everyone is saying.
All right. All right. So the next question is for Duane, and it's actually a follow-up question to the first question. We all know that cost per click can be drastically high if lots of companies are bidding for the same keyword. What can be done in a case where the generic keyword cost per click is too high and long tail keyword volume is too low? Again, a question from our registrant.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think we see it with a lot of competitive spaces, or even when you see brands bid on your brand name and they're trying to just drive up costs. What I find a lot of brands miss out on is they don't spend a lot of time just A/B testing their ad copy. You could have two completely different ads, and even though they have the exact same idea around it, they can convert differently even if they're shown against the same keyword. So even if you have high CPC, or it's a super competitive space, make sure you spend time A/B testing your ad copy, because that could be the big difference between somebody clicking on your ad and converting, somebody clicking on your ad and then deciding they don't want to buy your product. And not enough people spend time thinking about that ad that they show to people. Because even in, like, a great example is sometimes if you're in SaaS or subscription-based business model, putting your price point in an ad is a way to differentiate your ad from those who just say, buy us because we're number one. Well, everyone in the space can't be number one. So figure out a way to make your ad unique and stand out, and then get that click and get that convert.
So we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, regarding ICBCs, a lot of times what we have done is actually looking at alternative channels. So we will look at specifically, we've done a lot, Duane mentioned SaaS. I've worked with a lot of SaaS clients too. I worked with lawyer accounts where CPCs we've seen easily hit triple digits. So to kind of really step aside that, we've looked at other channels like Quora and some of the other social channels where we can still get in front of the right audience, but have it not be as competitive either because people aren't doing it, or just due to the way some of these other channels are set up, we can get in front of a highly relevant audience, more on the social side, and still sometimes get the same, if not better results, because we're hitting people at another angle and understanding that people go to more websites than just Google. There are other ways to still reach that same audience.
Right. Right. So Aaron, any thoughts on that?
So what we're working on with our teams is to look at Google as a system. Obviously, bids and CPCs are one element of that system. I think we're going to talk about quality score a bit later, but that's certainly one of the elements to work to optimize things like landing page optimization, post-click optimization, and as Michelle mentioned before, user experience optimization. You can afford to pay $100 a click if you have an 80% conversion rate. You can't afford to pay $100 a click if you have a 2% conversion rate. So in some ways, Google's a really good economic system that people will pay as much as they can afford. If you can afford to pay more, then you'll win those auctions and you'll box other competitors out. If you can't, then the market is going to price you out. So it's about optimizing the elements, that go into the CPCs, and also what comes afterwards. So figuring out how you can make the economic situation work for you, knowing full well that something like lawyers or high costs pieces of software are inherently going to be expensive. The best you can to optimize the other parts of it will certainly help you out.
Thank you, Aaron. So the next question is about automation. We are seeing a lot of platforms leaning towards automation. Are there any concerns for the future SEM PPC about that? And will automation completely do away with the conventional methods of running a PPC campaign? Joe, we'd like to start from you.
Overall, I'm not too concerned about it. A lot of things that we've seen in automation, whether it's simple scripts or some of the things that Google is taking over, has made some of our jobs easier. Now, in terms of automation, do I like seeing less search term reports, and do I like to have less control over my ads? No, not necessarily. So there's some things that, from that control I don't like, but ways that we can either automate reporting or make certain things easier, we can actually focus on strategy. One thing that I haven't really seen yet is automation really understand human emotion and ways that we could really tackle that. Could it get better? It probably will get better. For me, it's got a long ways to go. It's very good from, you know, hardcore data aspect from what we've seen, working on those type numbers. But in terms of crafting a branding story, even a lot of stuff that we've done in socializing in the way that we can structure our campaigns to tell that story and focus on emotions with certain audiences, to me, automation hasn't even come close to even performing well in that aspect.
That's a great insight. Fred, we want to hear from you as well about automation.
Yeah, so I mean, I wrote a whole book on that exact topic, so I can speak here for a couple of hours. But to sum it up, really, I mean, the reason that Google is doing automation in the first place is that there's a lot of potential advertisers who don't do PPC for a living, and AdWords, Google Ads, has become relatively difficult for them, right? And so Google's trying to find a way to make it possible for these potential advertisers to see some level of success on the system. That's fantastic. Where it frustrates people like us, and what Joe's referring to is Google, in some cases of adding more automation, takes away some of the data that we've relied on to make better decisions as far as optimizing our budgets, getting lower CPCs, better acquisition, all of that good stuff. And that's where we get frustrated. But so what I think is there's a shift from the very manual tasks that we used to do, which were not very appealing in many ways. Like, why spend time doing the math to figure out the cost per click when you have a cost per acquisition target, right? That should be automated. Reporting, like they were saying, like, why should we be spending hours pulling in data from different places, massaging it, and then putting it in the right place? Like, that should be automated. But there's a lot of stuff that the machines don't know. And so Joe was referring to like human emotion. And kind of what he's getting at is it's something about your business, right? So, you know, maybe you sell a product to people who are very frustrated about something. So the emotion you're going after is a frustrated user. Maybe you're selling a lifestyle product and you want to go after users when they're super happy. And maybe that level of happiness is not just for one person, but it's actually for society as a whole. So right now, you know, we have wildfires in California. So everybody's a bit frustrated about not being able to go outside. How do you take that insight? And if you're a furniture company, turn it into saying, hey, maybe we should be bidding a little bit more aggressively because people are stuck inside their houses and they want to make their houses a little bit nicer, right? Let Google figure out the exact bids and the exact keywords and the exact ad text. But you tell it, like, right now, based on my business conditions, is a great time for me to be selling. And so it's about marrying the automation from Google with your own business insights.
All right. So, and before we move to the next question, we would also like to hear a little from Duane about this particular subject, automation.
Yeah, you know, automation, it works when it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. I think that's the challenge. But I also think the flip side is, you know, as smart as, you know, Google and people work at like Snap or Facebook, wherever it is, they haven't built systems that understand like context. They don't know the difference between, you know, milk chocolate and chocolate milk. Or if you say this kid's toy, you know, Lego blocks can make a motorcycle, they don't know that, like, you don't mean a Harley Davidson, you just mean a toy motorcycle. So that means your ads get shown for motorcycles that, you know, we as adults would buy and take on the street. And so I think that's the challenge with automation is they're selling us the sizzle and that steak, but really it's like a dumpster fire half the time if they don't get the context right. And so I'm not fearful of automation. I just want them to do a better job of understanding like where they're not hitting the bullseye, so to speak.
Thank you, Duane. So I'm moving towards the next question, which is about ad bidding. And we will start with you, Michelle. Do you think the strategy for ad bidding on any of the PPC channels has changed post-pandemic? If yes, how? And if no, what factors one should consider before bidding?
That's a good question. So I just do Facebook and Instagram advertising. So ours it looks different for us than it does for the other panel, the other ones on the panel. For us, we're currently not doing as much manual bidding. We are not seeing a lot in terms of my particular niche that my clients, my customers are seeing. So for us, we're only seeing that it's gotten more competitive. In the beginning, we saw a wonderful dip in prices, but it didn't last. So we're just seeing that it's gotten more competitive and more rigorous to compete. The way that we're working to compete then is for us to make sure that the offer is even more clear, telling more stories, getting more rigorous about having the creative grab attention and be absolutely relevant. So there's the elements of making an incredible, stellar ad that meets them on the customer journey. But the others probably can speak more in terms of more relevance to your question.
Thank you, Michelle. Joe, your take on that?
Yeah, am I the first to say it depends on this webinar? Take a shot. Honestly, for us, it really depended on the industry. So one of my clients could really capitalize on anyone who had any cold or flu symptoms. So when this hit, they could really benefit, and they had like a remedy type thing. It wasn't medical, but it could really help lessen the symptoms of any cold or flu. So they got aggressive, and they started to see more conversions, and we could test more automated bidding on a variety of either just the search or social channels. Another client we had was SaaS. They're in the medical industry, and they had a product that already was hands-free. You can do stuff online that you didn't have to do in person at a medical office before, and they could really capitalize on it, so they became more aggressive. I had a travel client. You definitely see that wasn't really there. They wanted to have some sort of brand awareness, so they really pulled back. Even though everything got cheaper, they had to shift their strategy and really focus more on awareness and control that manually, even though things were better. So for me, it honestly, it's depending on your industry, how the market has been affected by what's going on in the world right now, and also to see what your competitors are doing. Sometimes to me, I think it's an opportunity to be aggressive. If you're seeing all your competitors in your industry backing off, that's an opportunity for you to stay on top of mind. So when things do slowly get back to normal in your industry, you're the ones that people remember.
Thanks. Thank you, Joe. Fred, your take.
What, it's not that you're not going to have to pay too much. Nobody's flying. If you're selling online stuff, everybody's buying online. The stat that we haven't mentioned today is that e-commerce has grown as much. We're basically 2 years ahead of where we expected to be at this point in time, all because of the pandemic. One thing that I find fascinating about PPC, like bidding aside maybe, is that in the pandemic, a lot of stuff has changed. It still changes on a daily basis. Just before this call, the panelists were talking about whose kids are in school. Mine are in hybrid. Michelle's are full-time in school. Joe's are full-time in school. But it really depends where you are. And guess what? 2 weeks from now, it's going to be different again, right? And that's just schools. Businesses, it's the same thing. Our gym's open. Our hair salon's open. Do you do BOPIS, right? So what's nice about PPC is that you can be so responsive to how the world changes, as opposed to search engine optimization, where you have to sometimes wait weeks or months for your changes to take effect and for your messaging to be updated. In pay-per-click, you control the messaging on top of the bid. And so you can run the bid that makes sense for you in terms of the conversion rate you're going to expect, but you can boost that conversion rate by actually telling people, prospective customers, what they can expect from you. So when I was right at the beginning of the pandemic trying to buy a Chromebook for my children, I couldn't go to Best Buy. Best Buy was closed, but they still had an ad up and running, and they said you can actually drive up to our store, buy online, pick up in store, BOPIS, right? And so that quick shift of messaging by them still made sure that I could buy the same thing from them. And then in terms of conversion rate, I'm sure they just looked at how conversion rate shifted. They adjusted their bids to still have great return on ad spend. But for me, it was almost the messaging that was more important.
Thank you, Fred. So the next question is about a few terms, not many PPC advertisers and especially designers business community may not be well acquainted with. I'm going to talk about the responsive search ads in Google. 2019 saw the launch of it. And the experts say that by the end of 2020, it will probably replace extended search ads feature introduced in 2018. First, I want you guys to throw some light on these two types of ads. And if this happens, how do you think it will change the workflow of digital marketer? We're gonna start with you, Aaron.
I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. There was an interesting question actually in the little questions poll about scale and making sure that you can do everything possible versus truly individualized. So for those who are attending and don't know, responsive search ads essentially mean that you give Google a couple of elements to an ad, like you give them a couple of headlines and a couple of description lines and a couple of taglines and a couple of values. And Google picks the one that it thinks is the rightest for the person. Also pointing to Joe and Dwayne's comments, Google's not necessarily the best at figuring out what someone really wants. If you go through your Discover feed, you can see that they make some somewhat rash decisions. So we've done a bunch of analysis on our side. So we tend to work with larger advertisers. So we have larger data sets, which is a luxury and also a problem sometimes. But in turn, we start to see what Google begins to favor and what responsive search ads tend to take priority. It should be no surprise to any consistent paid search person, but they almost always tend to favor the one with the highest click-through rate because that's how Google makes the most money. Time will tell how that evolves. So in the event that the conspiracy theories are true and that regular text ads are gone in 2021, which frankly could happen and wouldn't really surprise me, what I expect will happen is that we'll start to have more tools to pin based on audiences. So we'll be able to say if a person has been to your site before, they see this set of copy. If a person has not been to your site before, they see this set of copy. If it's a male, they see this. If it's a female, they see this. So in turn, what we're going to wind up with is almost Mad Libs. It's a little bit of fill in the blank. So when we're thinking about automation, personalization, customization, every other Asian, an important thing to think about is, okay, we know what the ad looks like if it's right. If personalization goes perfect, we know that it'll be the perfect ad for the perfect person. If it goes wrong and the incorrect ad is served to a person, is that okay? So I think the future is a good deal of figuring out how perfect our ads could get, and if they go wrong, how wrong is it, and what level of wrong are we okay to tolerate? So figuring out to make sure that people can see a piece of creative or an ad or a word that makes the most sense to them and won't turn them off from your brand.
Great. That's some great insight. Thanks, Aaron. Duan, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, totally. I think we've all got used to ETAs, but before ETAs, we had standard search ads, and we all kind of, some people probably freaked out more than others when Google said, ETAs were all the jam. So at this point, I kind of say the one thing in this job is constant change. The minute you get comfortable, Google decides they're going to change something on you. So I'm not worried if they get rid of, ETAs and make us use RSAs. Not to say like I've seen RSAs 100% be successful in clients' accounts, but whether I need to like be more granular with my campaigns or pin more of my ad lines to the ad, I'm going to do what it takes to like find out what combination is going to work. We've seen some RSAs work in some kinds of accounts. We've not seen it work in others. And so it just means we'll have to spend more time testing stuff out. And it is what it is. Google's going to do more stuff next year. We're going to hate some of it. And we just kind of have to accept it if we want to do this job sometimes.
Okay. Thank you, Duan. Fred, you want to add to that?
Dwayne, you're such a realist. No, I mean, exactly what he said, right? Like, listen, again, this is one of these changes that Google has put out there because it benefits the less sophisticated advertiser. And we've discussed problems on this call already, such as if somebody's looking for business cards. Aaron was making the example, like, do you know if that's a business customer, like a large corporation, or is that somebody looking for 50 free cards because they're starting, maybe if things work out, a consulting company and they don't want to pay for it, right? So, and that's the whole thing. But like, if you just look purely at the keyword, you don't know, but Google has all these other elements that they maybe do know. They do know what site somebody's been to. They know kind of the context of where the IP address is. Oh, that IP address happens to be inside Google's campus. Oh my God, if it's somebody at Google looking for a business card, that could be a huge order, right? And so what Google is trying to solve for is the fact that they can actually show an ad that may be speaking more to the corporate customer looking to buy business cards when they know that those are the conditions of the search. These are things that are relatively difficult for us as advertisers to do ourselves, and we've struggled with that for many decades now. So it's really good what Google's trying to do, but the question then simply becomes, are you happy with the average results that you get from Google? Or are you like the folks on this call, not just the panelists, but also the people watching? I mean, you're probably on this call because you want to get better than average results. So it's just going to mean you have a little bit more work, more creativity to figure out a workaround. And guess what? Maybe you make a responsive search ad and you put in all the headline variations that are basically the same. You know, you're just changing a single word or a plural to a singular. And so you limit the options that Google has, and you're basically still getting what you had from an expanded text ad. And it's a workaround, right? But don't fight the automation. Try to leverage it, play on top of it, and really get the best out of it in combination with your personal strategy and skills.
All right, all right. So I hope you guys are enjoying the session. Before we move forward, I would like to give a quick shout out to Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace, for organizing this event. Let's take a quick short break and keep these interesting conversations going on. Stay tuned, we'll be back to hear from our experts.
Hallmarks is a full-service video agency based around video production. We created a brand that fit our identity at the time, but as we've evolved as a company, we found that that original brand didn't quite fit our aspirations anymore. Finding a partner to rebrand your entire company takes a lot of time and effort. Finding Designhill was an incredible lifeline. Designhill offers a money-back guarantee. If we don't like any of the designs, we get all of our money back. The stuff that we ended up with were well beyond what we had been seeing on other creative services platforms. After creating a simple design brief by answering some questions created by Designhill, we posted, and within a few days, we had over 250 entries. Designhill's platform made it easy to communicate with all of the potential designers. Eventually, we picked a winner. In addition to a logo, our designer also created a letterhead, business cards, and banners for all of our social media platforms. With Designhill's help, we now have a brand that meets our aspirations. We're ready for the future and everything that it's here to bring.
All right, we are back again, and let's continue with the session. The next couple of questions are going to be a little basic yet important, also because a fair part of our Designhill's business community is first-time entrepreneurs and early-age startups. It's only fair we include these questions. I'm going to start with talking a bit about click-through rate. It is an important metric for any PPC campaign. So how do we ensure a better CTR with least cost per click? Michelle, we're going to start with you.
Yes, that'd be great. So the click-through rate is one of the first metrics that we look at, because if we can't get the link click-through rate, we've lost the battle. So we look at the click-through rate all, is there an interest? And then we look at the link click-through rate as well. And we're even looking at the ratio between the two of them. So in order to get the link click-through rate, we have to know that we've put an offer before that audience that they really want. So we had a webinar recently that started in the middle of a live launch, and our link click-through rate was dismal. So we quickly scrambled to change up our creative and our copy, and the audience was the same, but by changing the copy and the creative that we're seeing, we were able to quickly bring up our link click-through rate to an area that we felt really comfortable with. And then the launch made over 145,000 in just a very short amount of time. So that link click-through rate is something that's really important. If you're not getting a link click-through rate where you want it to be, if you're not getting the link clicks that you want, then it's probably an offer issue.
Right. So it's the basic nuances that makes the difference. Aaron, we want to hear from you about click-through rate.
I think Michelle raised a good point that it's very much so about presenting the right message to your audience, and it's always been said that search and social paid search ads are your best market research tool because your audience will tell you exactly if you're giving them the information that they want. So, I mean, look, we look at it as an indicator of success, but not necessarily the meaning of success. We had an old saying that you don't pay your rent in clicks. So, well, I suppose there's some businesses that do profit based on traffic, but most of our clients tend to profit based on sales or leads or something like that. So we'll use click-through rate as an indicator to conversion rate. If you have a really high click-through rate but a really bad conversion rate, that means there's some sort of a message mismatch, and you're probably getting a lot of people who are clicking because you're not giving them the right information. Versus if you have the two that align, we have a metric that we like to call, I guess I call it ICR, which stands for impression to conversion. So we want to make sure that that's as high as possible, that both people are clicking and they're doing something afterwards. So when you get those two merged together is when you have the most success. But since every ad platform is monetized based on clicks, they want higher click-through rate. So to some degree, it's a balance to figure out how you can play how the system wants you to play and also do what's best for your business.
Thank you, Aaron. Joe, your take on that?
Hey, I'm going to kind of answer it differently. And I mean, we definitely look at click-through rate for the most part as something that's important. We want people to be engaged, but kind of going back to what Aaron said, making sure it's the right user. So sometimes we're willing to sacrifice click-through rate if it better helps us pre-qualify that user. Kind of going back to the keyword discussion that we talked about, if it is a more generic search term, but we know so many people in this industry, no matter what level, search for the same type of generic search term, we're willing to put something in our ad copy that's going to have a good chunk of people not click on the ad because we don't want those users. One example is we have a SaaS client that only wants enterprise level type businesses, but people search for a generic keyword to try to find it. So we lay that out in our ad copy for companies with employee sizes X and up. And on these generic keywords, we don't do it for all our ads, just for those search terms. And we're willing to sacrifice that click-through rate, knowing that we're going to pre-qualify these users and get a more qualified user to actually convert on the site. So we look at click-through rate for the quality score aspect, but it really comes down to the goals of what we want to do and who we're actually trying to attract.
Yeah, and I'd like to weigh on that too. So CTR is certainly not the end-all metric, but it is a really good optimization indicator. And so, for example, what you can do is you can look for a high click-through rate but low conversion rate ad. And basically what it's saying is the user seems really interested in what you're offering, but for some reason, is that landing page bad? Is it difficult to find what you just promised? Or are you actually over-promising in the ad? And based on that finding, now you can actually figure out, well, should I fix the ad? And is my CTR actually unreasonably high because maybe I said you get something for free when in fact you don't? Or is it the landing page that's in some way broken? And then you do the flip side of that as well, right? And then you can look at keywords and you can look at search terms and you can say, oh, look for a search term and the click-through rate relative to the keyword that triggered that search term. And the search term, by the way, that simply means that the user didn't search for exactly the same thing as your keyword in many cases. Right? If you see a really high click-through rate on a specific search term, higher than your keyword, that's an indication that that might be a super relevant variation that maybe you hadn't thought about. Maybe you can add that as a keyword, write a better ad text for it that's more compelling. And so all of these things help you get towards a better quality score, a higher position in the ad auction, a lower cost per click as a result of that. And hopefully at the end of the day, the thing you actually care about is cheaper leads and more profits.
All right. Thank you, Fred. Next topic would be the quality score. It's also one of the questions asked in the questions tab. Harshita asked about this. So again, an important metric, but many PPC advertisers still find it a little confusing metric to fully fathom or master. What can we do to improve the quality score? We'll start with you, Duane.
Yeah, I think this is a great question because, we see it a lot on Reddit. People ask about this, my quality score is, 4 or 5 or 6. What can I do to improve it? And, my always question I go to is like, are people converting at acceptable, CPA or CPL, so cost per lead or cost per acquisition, or if you have a ROAS goal? Because I think the trick that we don't talk about with Google is, machines do quality score. So if a machine gives you a 4 or 5, you could do a million things over the next year and never move the needle on that quality score, right? And sometimes there are bigger fish to fry in your account. There are, landing pages you could rework. There's ad copy you could work on. So it's not something I look at unless, a campaign is really tanking and we've looked at everything else, then maybe I'll look at quality score, but otherwise I don't think it's something you should focus on. It's an easy thing to look at and say, hey, we got from a 5 to a 6, but it's just a machine that decides your quality score. And it could be a red herring in your account in terms of like performance and how you do.
Okay.
So sorry, I keep unmuting the wrong person. I do want to counter on that a little bit. So it is just a machine making the decision. And I'm the former Googler, right? And I worked on quality scores. So I kind of have to stand up for it here. It's
fine,
just
Brett,
the machine deciding. Exactly. It's just the machine deciding. But at the end of the day, the machine is looking at the user behavior. And so if you have a low quality score, what is it that's really not resonating with those users? And I fully agree with your point. Like, quality score is not always the right thing to try and affect, because you might do far better like doubling your conversion rate by fixing your landing page than by getting a 10% boost in quality score, right? That makes total sense because that's the bigger impact on your bottom line. But I do like to look at it as a gauge of how successfully am I doing the thing that Google likes. And at the end of the day, if Google doesn't like what I'm doing, then I'm not going to show a lot of ads anymore, right? So I have to in some way figure out what the machine likes. And hopefully the machine is pretty in tune with what the user likes. And so that's kind of like why I do look at it quite a bit.
Okay, so Joe, do you agree with Duan?
No, I'm kidding. To me, it kind of goes back to what I was saying with the SaaS example. When we were kind of pre-qualifying users, we're understanding we're going to take a hit on quality score because our click-through rate, or our expected click-through rate, is going to go down. But what we do is we first focus on finding the right user and how we're converting first. And I'm not focusing on quality score as my first metric. I'm focusing on converting the right user. Then I'm going to say, okay, we have this baseline, we're converting really well, but like to what Frederick said, our ad impressions might be going down because our quality score is low. So after we find the right user, we're going to say, how can we improve either the landing page experience or the click rate through this audience we're trying to target to then later on improve the quality score to get more impressions, to lower our CPAs and CPCs. So it's just, we still look at quality score, but to me, I'm going to focus on the conversions in my target audience first, and then what I can do to make Google happy second. Because the people make you money. Google takes your money, the people make you money. So I'm going to try to make money first and then give Google a little bit more money.
And Michelle, quality score looks a little bit different on Facebook and social networks, right? Like, so what should people focus on outside of Google? Is there like a quality score equivalent?
There is. It's called the quality ranking, and it has to do with engagement, conversion, and then the quality of the ad. We use it, but we use it once we're troubleshooting is a little hard. Like it's, I don't mean it's hard, but that's maybe not the right word. So we're watching it, but our first eye is on the return on ad spend. So then if we're seeing the return on ad spend either dip or not be at the level that we want, then we're like, okay, now we're looking at the quality score and how can we increase that engagement? How can we put more of a story ad in front of them? How can we come across with a creative that's more of a lifestyle type of image, or a video, something that's more engaging to them? So we're then going back based on the ROAS, okay, and now we're seeing how we can be more granular. So I'm agreeing with Joe on his approach.
All right, thank you, guys. I was about to circle back to Michelle for the next question. It is about PPC landing page. So Michelle, you spoke about how small nuances like creatives and ad copy makes the whole difference. We have done all of that. Let's say a PPC advertiser has done all of that, but the PPC landing page is not is we couldn't cut through it. So what are the hallmarks of a good PPC landing page?
I like this question a lot because before we ever run advertising, we're going through the client's landing page with a fine-tooth comb, and often we're giving pretty major changes to it to make it clear. So between your ad and between your landing page, it's got to be congruent or you'll lose it. We even want the look to be really similar, the branding to be similar, because we want it to be as seamless as possible. So number one, it needs to be congruent. And then the other thing is that right at a glance, top part of the landing page, it's got to be absolutely clear what the offer is. And for clients, they often think that they're being clear, but it may not be clear. So my clients are in the digital market, not digital marketing, but they have a digital course, so an online course. They're doing webinars, they're doing video series. They are authors, coaches, speakers, influencers, and they're selling a digital product. And so we're getting people into the free training that they have. So that's different than an e-commerce product. We have a couple of those clients, but in terms of that type of landing page, we've got to be really clear about what the free training is about, whether it's a video, whether it's a webinar. There can be absolutely no question at all. And it's got to happen in a split second that at that top banner, you know what it is. Then we want the button above the fold. And so that means that someone doesn't have to scroll down for it, because 50% of the time people don't scroll. And then we want benefits of showing up for that training, not features. So the benefit is the transformation that they'll experience by showing up. And then we'll often have a bio, but that's before the fold, underneath the fold. And that's also then we're include testimonials frequently. So different kind of landing page than an e-commerce site, but all of those things need to be in place.
Right. So, Aaron, before we move to the questions tab, we would like to hear from you about the landing page. And yeah.
I think the audience has a sneaking suspicion what direction I'm going to go, which is audiences. So, I mean, specifically thinking about B2B, but frankly, any sort of non-e-commerce process, different people want different things out of their website. Some people want all the information and just to roam. Some people want none of the information. But the typical format of a lead generation landing page is a couple bullets, you get a title, and fill out a form. We've reached a point where a lot of times the simpler the landing page, the poorer quality the lead winds up being. That is, if you don't pre-qualify people, as Joe was mentioning before, you'll get a lot of leads that will just wind up wasting time. So we'll have to figure out, as we work through these things, what sort of information do we have to give people ahead of time in order to not only make the first decision, that is giving their information out or signing up for an email list or even going to your site, but also making sure that you as a company have the right information from that person knows what they're signing up for. We have a number of clients in the IT services area, so like a help desk for a business, and all the time there are all sorts of people who think they're reaching the help desk for Verizon or Vodafone or whatever issues they're having or fixing their TV. Now, to some degree, a landing page won't fix that, and people don't feel like reading, and they just want to yell at something. But in other cases, you can sort of weed out some of those issues. The other issue tying back to quality scores, you have to think about it from a development and a speed perspective. Both Google, Facebook, everybody wants to make the web faster. So if you have a really heavyweight landing page that loads really slowly, you'll get punished. If you have a fast, lightweight landing page that loads really fast, you'll get rewarded. So you have to be careful with development to make sure that as you're putting the information on there, you're making it light and user-friendly so that people will be happy when they get there.
All right. So we're gonna move to the questions tab a bit, and I already saw Aaron answering a few questions. So I'm gonna take this question by Ko. It has got two upvotes. He asks that society as a whole seems to be moving in two directions. pure practical physicality versus individualized service. Do you think that PPC will move to these ends of the spectrum too? So, Aaron, I saw you answering. Could you please,
Yeah, I think I touched on this a bit before, a few answers ago. I don't believe that the web will ever get to true personalization. We'll never get perfect, especially as the world is moving, in my opinion, somewhat falsely in that it's not really happening, but moving towards privacy and information protection and being able to opt out of data. So I don't believe that data will be truly democratized, meaning that everyone will have access to everything to give the perfect message to the perfect person. I don't think that that'll ever happen, but what I think will happen is we'll have more opportunities to have a one to few conversation, in that you'll be able to have an ad that is dedicated towards a group of people or a group of keywords that fit a certain criteria, but you won't be able to say like, okay, Dwayne Brown gets this specific ad, Fred gets this specific ad, Joe gets this specific ad. There's just not enough data and computing power in the world, much less the desire for consumers to have that. So I think that we'll be able to get more customized, but not necessarily personalized.
all right. Duan, you would like to add to that?
Sure, yeah. I hate predicting the future because God knows I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't think we're going to have some Minority Report style life. I just don't think that's going to happen. We'll probably have Mad Max where we all live in the desert more than anything else where the world's going right now because it's totally on fire. I think personalization is great, but I think most people agree, even as just individuals on this call and not as marketers, we probably hate it at times because we get too many ads and there's not enough frequency capping going on. So I think for most people, especially people on this call, I think we should all just focus on the next 3-4 months. Let's make it to the end of the year, maybe focus on the first half of the year, what you want to do as a business, and then worry about like the far future years from now, because like there's just too much going on to think about like where we're going to be 3 years from now, which I can guarantee will not be anything we predict right now, because so much will change between now and the next 15 months when we get to the end of 2021.
All right, all right. So the next question is by Todd, and he has specifically asked you, Joe. When you were talking about automation, you made a great point about human emotion. Now he wants to know that absent a data-driven approach, how should companies approach that angle creatively?
Yeah, I didn't come up with this quote, and this isn't the exact quote because I'm going to butcher it. I don't know where I heard it from, but it's something that I agree with is focusing purely on the data all the time can really hinder creativity. If you're always focusing on, what you see, we've done this in the past and this has always worked. Well, then you can wind up just doing the same thing over and over again. And then if you're not really adapting to kind of what Fred said, or I think everyone kind of said it, this webinar is life changes, things change. You can't predict a pandemic. So if you're always going by what the data says and then a pandemic hits, you might be throwing it for a curveball right there. So understand looking at the data is really assessing what you have done. So use the data to really analyze the performance of what you're doing. And yes, it can help make some tweaks for any future decisions. But in terms of launching new products or focusing on a branding effort to an audience that has never really been exposed to you, or if you want to just try different ad creatives. I do a lot with video. And focusing on just serious what the data says videos doesn't really help from a creative standpoint of making a video that can make someone laugh, trigger an emotion. And that's something where we use the data to analyze our creative and branding efforts after the fact. It's not necessarily going to be our main guide all the time.
Thank you, Joe. So the next question again is about the new practices. We spoke about some new practices and trends that happened in 2019-20. Do you guys think there are any expected changes to PPC execution that the marketers should be aware of, especially in the post-COVID world? What would be the newer trends like the way businesses acquire new customers? We're going to start with you, Fred.
Yeah, I mean, more people are going to buy through e-commerce. More people are going to buy online, pick up in store. There's going to be fewer store visits. Gyms have to function at reduced capacity. So clearly the business world has changed. And how much you can spend on acquiring new customers in some cases is resultingly changed as well. But Dwayne said it really well. I mean, it doesn't matter if there's a pandemic or not. Like, Google's always going to change stuff, and we're going to have to adapt. And that's what makes PPC fun, right? That's why most of us in this call have been doing it for over a decade. But if you don't like change and you like just figuring out what to do and then keep doing that for the next 10 years, like, hire one of these guys, because they enjoy this stuff, right? They enjoy figuring it out.
Okay, thanks. Michelle, we would also like to hear from you. Yes, so how do you think the business is gonna acquire new customers in the post-COVID world? Is it going to remain the same, especially in context with Facebook ads?
It won't remain the same. So we see more than ever how extreme is the need for flexibility and the need for creativity and the need to be able to pivot very, very quickly with the messaging. So as the others have mentioned, when COVID hit, we had to quickly change messaging on several of my clients to be able to capitalize on the trajectory that they were already on, or to be able to change directions entirely. So there's the extreme need to be able to just turn on a dime, even more so than ever. And ad costs are rising and won't be going down, unfortunately, and most likely. So it's just being willing to pay more to bring in a client and stay rigorously flexible and creative.
Session. This is the last question, and we will everyone about this. What would you suggest to people who are starting out new in PPC? Fred, you would like to start, and then I'll take it to the other panelists as well.
Yeah, when you're starting on a PPC, I think watch stuff like this, right? The experts are really happy to share information, and kind of like coming into it from the perspective of, hey, we need a keyword and an ad, right? Those are the basics, but there's so much more to it. It's also really asking yourself the question, are you in PPC for the long haul? Do you really want to make this a career? Or is this just something that you happen to need to do because your boss just told you need to have a PPC campaign, and you're going to do it and then you're going to walk away from it, right? So if you're really into it, great educational materials, go and consume as much of that as possible, talk to the experts. If on the other hand, this is more of a task you have to do, like so many experts, I don't know if Designhill has PPC professionals for hire. Sounds more like design, but like these guys are all for hire. Use tools. Optimizer is a great tool that will help you at least do some of the basics, right? But sort of figure out where you stand, right? Like what your long-term goals are, because I think that's really going to influence the decision you make in that regard.
All right, thank you, Fred. Aaron.
I don't know if you called on me because I unmuted, but I just wanted to talk. I think the other major comment that I'll make is to diversify the sources that you learn from. I know that Google has this huge push to have their own Google certified learners thing, whatever. Joe, don't be that much of a hater. I fully support it, and I think it's a great initiative.
I started that initiative 20 years ago. I mean, don't hate on it so much. I mean, maybe the current iteration.
But what I'll also say is I've read a lot of stories and I've talked to a lot of people who used to work at Google and then went somewhere else. And in turn, what happened is they built their whole career speaking Google language, and then they went to other companies that don't speak Google language. So it's really important to diversify where you learn from. Gut check your sources and use them just like you would at university, is that you use it as an information to help springboard yourself. So take the information that you learn, don't take it as fact, and take it as different tools to put in your toolbox that you can leverage as you deploy your own marketing strategies. We're all experts, whatever that means, but also don't listen to all of us verbatim, because your scenario is going to be different from ours. So instead, take the information that we give, save it in your little file save button in the back of your brain, and then pick when to use it. And that's only a decision that you can make.
Okay. Duan, last thoughts on this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think when I started back in 2007, things were a lot different. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. It's really easy. And I think if we're starting today, I think trying to master one ad platform, whether it's, Google, Facebook, like Michelle talks about, or even if you want to start on Snap Ads, like we've been doing Snap Ads a lot the last couple of years with clients. And I think really, spend the next year really understanding that platform and how it works. And then, kind of like what Aaron and Fred said, expand out and learn the other platforms. So if you start on Google, learn Facebook, or you start on Google, learn Snap, and vice versa, because the best marketers, are really deep in, 1 to 2 channels, but they understand how the whole funnel works. They understand how other channels work, and that just makes you a better marketer as a whole. Don't become just a Google marketer or just a Facebook marketer, because it limits your ability to do your job. It also just limits your career trajectory as you go. I mean, I don't think Google or Facebook are going to go anywhere, but if Facebook died one day, you would want to be just a Facebook marketer because it limits your ability to get jobs in the future.
Yes, that's right. Joe?
Yeah, 2 things that have always been helpful is no matter how long we've all been in this industry, we all seek out information. So we're always learning, trying to better ourselves, and things change. The way that we do things now is completely different than I think when each of us started within this industry. And I think when you're getting involved with any paid media job or career, that's something that you really have to keep in mind. One thing is I never consider myself an expert in every single area of paid media. If I look at something like, Dwayne said, I've seen Dwayne talk about Pinterest and, D2C, I've learned a lot about data analysis from Aaron, just seeing it, stuff that I'm not familiar with just due to the clients I've had in the past. So I rely and outreach to other people within the community who are really good at their jobs that I may have not a previous experience with. And it takes that ongoing yearn to want to learn all this stuff just so you get better. So you have to have that drive to really be on top of it and to do good at your job, especially as how fast-paced this industry is.
Thank you, Joe. And last but not the least, Michelle, I want you to answer this in context with the Insta and Facebook ads. You are an expert in that. So what would you suggest to the people who are just starting out?
Good question. All of the others had great answers. I think it's great to focus in on one platform in terms of whether you're Google or Facebook, but focus on one platform. And the other is become a great marketer, not just a media buyer. So a media buyer would be placing the ad, setting it up. To be really good, to be really exceptional, you need to be a marketer and understand what really works in the entire funnel. So become a marketer that understands the language and what's happening in the entire funnel, not just a media buyer.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. This brings us to the end of this wonderful session. Indeed, a value-packed session. There's a lot more, although we could have covered. Unfortunately, we are limited by time here. I hope you guys loved the session. Once again, I would like to thank Aaron, Michelle, Duan, Fred, and Joe for taking out the time to be a part of this event. And to the audiences, this is not where it ends. We have a lot more events lined up for you in the upcoming days. The next event is a panel discussion on building and scaling remote companies, tips and strategies for future. So if you guys are interested and haven't registered yet, I'm putting the link of our event section in the chat section, where you can find all our upcoming events. To stay updated with events like these, you can follow us on LinkedIn page. You can also give us suggestions on the topic you would like us to cover and the speakers you would want us to host. I'm dropping the link of the LinkedIn page in chat section here as well. To watch the session and other such wonderful events, subscribe to our event section on designhill.com/events, or visit our official YouTube channel, Designhill. You can find the link in the chat section here. Again, the team would be putting it. For all the business owners who are listening to this and wish to source high quality graphic designers and build their brand today, visit www.designhill.com. Also, we have recently launched a DIY creative tool called Designhill Studio. Be it a designer or non-designer, everyone can create beautiful designs such as business collateral, presentations, social media posts, banners, and almost everything you can think of. To check it out, you can visit designhill.com/studio. So this is where it ends. Thank you so much again, all the speakers. I'd like to say bye to everyone who joined us here today. Take care, guys, and stay safe.